This is Paul. Yeah. Just so you understand, yes. This idea of self talk, I actually found it in the Bible. In fact, I might get the Bible out in a few minutes. David in the Bible was having some difficulties. And the Bible says that he encouraged himself. Now, for all of those in law enforcement that think it's crazy, right, to talk to yourselves, you should have a conversation today. Because it's not. It's actually in the Bible, and it's very healthy to really speak to yourself about what you're doing. Yes. So that you have a good idea of exactly how you're involved in your own personal life. Now, for those that say being in the third person, as in I, Paul C. Budnick, am going to speak to myself, yes, about what am I doing today? Now, there's what's known as the search warrant. Yeah. Let's say you arrested me for a crime where you have the evidence at this very moment that I was not in that city. Yes. There's a probable cause arrest that there's no probable cause that I committed a crime in Sequim, Washington on December 31st of 2015 because I was on the bus. Yeah. I was in the Port Angeles library that day. Oh. Now, when you use probable cause as the reason for arresting people, yeah, you do not require a search warrant because of the provisions of the Violence Against Women's Act. Yeah. Something that you don't really feel is necessary. Yeah. To actually have the signature of the petitioner to be able to enforce. Now, just looking over that document about the gender bias of males versus females, yes, there was a comment in there, and I'm going to try to find it, where the state, yes, the stop money, the services training officers and prosecutors money, yeah, was directly connected to the requirements of the Violence Against Women's Act. Now, you cannot stop and search the personal belongings of any person, right, without the enforcement of the Violence Against Women's Act. Now, just looking at it, yeah. This idea of arresting me on January 4th for a crime you know I didn't commit, yes. And then making me go through all those court hearings where you search my personal belongings, yeah. hmm hmm And then saying that he's crazy, the gender stereotypes color the police action, yeah. The police officer more likely to not take any action if a woman is involved, yes. It says here police officers are often the first step in the judicial process for processing of domestic violence claims. Yeah. Now, I was arrested and put in jail. And you searched all my personal belongings when I told you, Officer Larson, I wasn't in Squim. In fact, you have the evidence that I wasn't there. I was on the bus that morning from the Serenity House. But I'm sitting here in the emergency room right now because you refuse to enforce the warrantless search of my person and my belongings because there was no probable cause for the arrest. Now, the Violence Against Women's Act, could you get me all of those? That is, see, to its credit, right? The state of Washington made efforts to educate its judges as to how to handle domestic violence situations. Now, this is for the judges, not the police officers. The Washington has established a Gender and Justice Commission. Yeah, let's find out who they are. Yeah, which provides all judges, Judge Porter, Judge Landis, the new judge in Jefferson County. I know I have to be in court in just a few hours. Yeah. Commissioners, Commissioner Brent Baisden, and then the magistrates that they don't have in Clallam County. Anybody can be a magistrate and the judge in the state with a copy of the Domestic Violence Manual for Judges. Now, I did go through most of that manual and I sent you a link to it. While the manual attempts to follow the majority domestic violence law with gender neutral language, it falls short of this goal. Now, this same language is echoed in the 1999 King County, Washington publication. Yeah. I sent you exactly what the King County's literature says. Well, there's a vagina. How are you? Sheriff of King County. It's Paul Budner. Now, I just know, okay, you and your lover, you're married. Good for you. Why don't you give me the vagina of your spouse? Because it seems to me, oh, somebody got upset again. Now, this battered woman syndrome is allowable as a claim of self-defense. Yes. However, a woman trying to admit the defense must also provide some evidence that she was in immediate danger. Yeah. My wife has never been in immediate danger. Approach. At least she hasn't been in immediate danger from myself. Yeah. Battered spouse syndrome is seen as being synonymous with battered woman syndrome. Let's say your spouse kidnapped your sons and ran to Clallam County and you issued a protection order without any jurisdiction of law. Now, I know this mere reasonable person standard in cases of self-defense. Yes, it's not reasonable, yes, to not protect any of the rights of men. Seems there's some blind faith in this, Jessica. Did you ever read any of the declarations where Jessica was an eyewitness? Yes, she's blind. Oh. It appears that the only burden of proof is to provide testimony from an expert witness. Now, I'm going to a cell hearing today where the expert witness, Phyllis, yes, I showed her forgeries and she said I was delusional. I showed her where the petitioner didn't sign the protection order. Yes. I showed her that I was not given any notice or opportunity to be heard. But I'm going to a mental institution because I talked to myself. Ouch! Maybe I have the battered spouse syndrome that applies to men. Oh. States versus Robert to describe the court that explained as a classic battered women syndrome. Are there any syndromes that are gender specific? I might have battered spouse. Thus, men are forced to assert the defense through analogy, which leaves the door open to interpretation by the individual judge. Yes, accepted and initial. Now, let's say Judge Landis. I don't know her marital situation. But let's open the door to interpretation today. Okay. You have the evidence, right, that I wasn't in Bryn, Washington. I have a mental disease, a mental illness or defect that is known as battered spouse syndrome. Now, I sent you emails every day, yes, providing the evidence of crime. You've said I'm crazy. Yeah. Obviously, I'm traumatized. Yes. Being homeless all these years. Missing my family. Yes. And we're going to leave the door open to interpretation where Phyllis from Western State Hospital, yes, is going to say the man is delusional for thinking that it requires a signature of the actual petitioner. That I have some rights as the respondent, the father of 5 sons, where you have to protect those rights because you have to give me notice of court hearings. Yes. And my sons have some rights to not be in the wrong grade, but you won't enforce those rights either. Now, fourth, courts do not acknowledge the fact that a woman can initiate violence. Now, I know there's no way my wife had my actual mouth. She called herself a cunt when I hadn't used any profanity for approximately 4 years. And then she made up the whole story, and you've decided that. Now, in addition, the court did not give credence to the battered man defense, but instead viewed all of the defendant's arguments in light of self-defense. Put my own signature right there. Now, there's a little lawsuit here someplace. Yes. My wife actually did hit me, and then that's when she decided to abduct my sons and call the police and make up a story of domestic violence and child abuse. Yep. However, a dissenting Nevada Supreme Court justice argued that plenty of statistics showing women can be violent. It does exist. Yes. Men can try to seek protection under the Washington Domestic Violence Prevention Act. But we don't really enforce that for men, do we? Why don't you just go ahead and get the vaginas today? Because sis did speak? Yes. And I'm due to be in court in approximately 3 hours from now. Because my public defender would call me and then say, well, you don't have to go. And I know he's trying to trick me.